The nurse asked me to confirm my surgery date, and for a moment I didn't know what to say. I finally told her there wasn't one anymore. I had canceled it 3 weeks earlier. She asked if everything was okay, and I said yes. It was just a scheduling issue, because that was easier than telling her the truth. The truth was that I couldn't afford to be sick that month, not with our savings account sitting at $400. That night, sitting in my car in the clinic parking lot, my phone buzzed with a message from our bank. A fraud alert flagging unusual activity on our joint checking account. I almost swiped it away. We got those sometimes for gas station holds or online orders, but something made me open it. A recurring transaction, the same amount, going out every month to a company I didn't recognize. I sat there staring at it, and the question that formed in my mind wouldn't leave me alone. If we had $400 to our name, where was this money coming from every month? I want to explain how we got there because none of it happened overnight. The pain had started quietly, cramping that felt heavier than usual, then pressure in my lower back that never went away, then bleeding that made me plan my work schedule around bathroom breaks. I kept telling myself it was stress. I was 38, busy, tired, and used to working through discomfort. One afternoon at the dental office, I was leaning over a patient when a sharp wave of pain tightened across my lower abdomen. My vision blurred at the edges. I finished rinsing the instruments, stepped into the hallway, and barely made it to the break room before I had to sit on the floor. Denise found me with my back against the cabinet and one hand pressed to my stomach. "Michelle, what happened?" "I'm fine, just give me a minute." "You're sitting on the floor." I stood up too fast. "You were already standing." Even then I tried to laugh. Denise did not. She crouched beside me. "Is this the same pain?" I nodded. "When is the surgery?" "I haven't scheduled it yet." Her face changed. "Why not?" "Money. Greg said that. We both said that." "No, you repeated what Greg said. That is not the same thing." I was too tired to argue. She helped me into a chair and brought me water. I sat there breathing through the pain while the clock moved toward my next patient. "You are not taking the next appointment," she said. "I need the hours. You need a doctor. I already saw one." Then listened to her. A week later, my doctor ordered an ultrasound. Fibroids, she told me, several of them large enough to explain the pain, the fatigue, and the bleeding I had been blaming on work. She recommended surgery and made it clear that waiting indefinitely was not a good plan. "It is not an emergency room emergency," she said, "but untreated, this usually gets more disruptive. I would rather schedule this in the next few months than wait another year." I told Greg that evening. He sat at the kitchen table with the surgical estimate in front of him, reading every line as if the answer might change if he looked long enough. "What did she actually say?" he asked. "Is it an emergency?" She said I should not wait too long. "But not an emergency. That does not mean it is optional." "I did not say optional," he tapped the paper. "Look at the deductible. Then there is the time you would be off work. We would have to pull from savings, and with what is happening at my company, I do not think that is smart." A few weeks earlier, Greg had told me his employer had restructured its commission plan. He said regional bonuses were being reduced and client reimbursements were taking longer. I had seen an email from his office confirming that a restructuring was real. "We just need to get through this year," he said. "Open enrollment is coming. Maybe the new plan will be better. If we wait until then, we can make a responsible decision." "What is in savings right now?" He leaned back in his chair. "Why?" "Because I want to know what we are deciding with. The accounts are complicated this month. There are pending reimbursements, the credit card cycle, and a commission payment that has not cleared. So show me." "I will. But you are upset right now, and you are looking at one number without the full picture." "I am not looking at any number. That is the problem." He softened his voice, which somehow made me feel less reasonable. "Michelle, I handle this because you hate dealing with it. That was our arrangement. I am not hiding money from you. I am trying to keep us from making an emotional decision because you're scared." I remember apologizing. That is the part I still think about. I was the one in pain, and I apologized for asking what we could afford. I postponed the surgery. I picked up extra shifts to help cover what Greg called a temporary rough patch. I stopped buying anything for myself. I wore the same 3 work outfits on rotation. I switched to store-brand groceries, canceled a weekend trip to see my sister, and put off replacing a pair of shoes with a cracked sole. Greg noticed all of it. He watched me compare prices in the grocery aisle. He watched me leave for work before sunrise. He watched me come home, press a heating pad against my stomach, and fall asleep before dinner. He never once said, "You do not have to do this." He simply accepted the sacrifices as if they were proof that his plan was working. This was not a new financial arrangement for us. Years earlier, when we combined accounts, Greg offered to handle the bills, passwords, and account alerts because he was better with spreadsheets and I hated looking at numbers. At first it felt like a kindness. Over time it became a wall I did not realize I was standing behind. If I asked why a balance was low, he gave me a lesson instead of an answer. "We are not low," he told me once. "We are managing cash flow. You would know that if you looked at the budget spreadsheet I sent you." I had not looked at it. I felt foolish enough that I did not ask again. When Denise asked me when I had last opened our bank statements myself, I could not remember. Around that same time, Greg started taking calls outside. He kept his phone face down. If I walked into the room while he was typing, he locked the screen. "Client stuff," he said when I asked. "Vendor contracts. You do not want to hear about it." I told myself he was stressed. Then came the fraud alert. The next day, on my lunch break, I called the bank. The representative asked a series of verification questions, confirmed that I was a joint account holder, and read me the transaction history connected to the alert. "It is a recurring automatic payment," she said. "Same amount, same date each month. To who?" "The merchant name is Baymont Ridge Apartments." I wrote it down. "Is there a person attached to it?" "I can only share what is connected to your account, ma'am. I can confirm it is categorized as a housing-related payment. I cannot provide information belonging to another customer or lease." "I understand." "When did it start?" She gave me the month. The same month Greg told me his commissions had been cut. That night, I waited until dinner was over. "There was a fraud alert on our joint account," I said. "A recurring payment to an apartment complex. Baymont Ridge. Do you know anything about that?" He did not flinch. "Oh, that." The way he said it made me feel foolish before he even explained. "We are covering temporary housing for a new hire until his relocation clears. It runs through our account for a tax reason. Then the company reimburses it." Why would an employee's apartment go through our personal checking account? It is not his permanent apartment. It is short-term housing. The bank said it has been recurring for months. Reimbursements lag. That is normal. Then show me where the reimbursements came back. I will pull the paperwork this weekend. Why did you never mention it? Because it is work. I do not tell you every time I expense a hotel or a client dinner. This is rent. He sighed and looked at me as if I were turning a small problem into a large one. "Michelle, you are under a lot of pressure. You are tired, you are worried about your health, and now you are looking at a transaction without context. Why would I hide money from you?" I did not answer. He never showed me the paperwork. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived at our house. It was addressed to Gregory Caro and marked as a payment method reminder. Inside, his name appeared beside one word that changed everything: Guarantor. The notice referenced a unit at Baymont Ridge Apartments. Not employee housing, not a temporary company expense, a lease. I sat at the kitchen table holding that paper until the light outside changed. I wanted to call him immediately. I wanted to ask who lived there. Instead, I remembered how quickly he had explained the bank alert. If I confronted him before I understood what I had, he would give me another explanation and remove whatever I had not found yet. So I stayed quiet, and I looked. I opened every statement I could access. I searched by date, merchant, and amount. Then I wrote a timeline on a yellow legal pad. First, a transfer that matched a security deposit. 3 days later, a furniture store charge. The following week, a home goods purchase and a payment to a delivery company. Then the first monthly rent payment. Then the same payment again, month after month. I added the date Greg announced the commission cuts. I added the date I postponed my surgery. The dates sat almost on top of each other. The amount I needed for my medical deductible was less than what he had spent on the deposit, furniture, and first month of rent. I stared at that number until I felt physically sick. He had not merely failed to save enough for my treatment, he had redirected the money, then created a financial crisis to explain why it was gone. Baymont Ridge had a public website with employee profiles. On my lunch break, I scrolled through them and found Priya Nandan, 29, a leasing consultant with a professional headshot and a short biography about helping residents find the perfect home. Her public social media connected the rest. A photograph in front of Baymont Ridge with the caption, "Finally settled." A picture of a furnished living room where I recognized a lamp from the same store on our bank statement. In the corner of another photo, reflected in a dark window, was a man wearing Greg's watch. It was not enough to prove everything by itself, but it was enough to tell me where to look next. I did not confront him. Instead, I changed the passwords to my personal email and medical account. I opened a checking account in my name and redirected my paycheck there. I pulled my credit report and checked for accounts I did not recognize. I copied tax returns, insurance records, retirement statements, and the last 3 years of bank records. I did not empty our joint account. I did not hide money. I was angry, but I was not going to give Greg a legitimate financial complaint against me. Denise stored the copies in a locked cabinet at her house. "You need a lawyer before you need a fight," she said. "Paper first, feelings later." I met with Alan Whitfield the following week. He was calm, precise, and unwilling to promise anything he could not guarantee. "I want to be clear," he said after reviewing the folder. "Money spent on an affair can sometimes be raised as dissipation of marital assets. That can include rent, deposits, furniture, and gifts. But the rules vary. A judge does not automatically hand you every dollar back. So what does this do? It gives us documented facts for settlement negotiations. It shows the spending was not ordinary household spending and that it happened while you were being told there was no money for medical care. Should I move half the savings? No, not without a plan. Protect your income, preserve records, and do not make impulsive transfers. We want you to look careful, not retaliatory." That mattered to me. I did not want revenge to become another version of Greg controlling my decisions. There was one person left who might know what the apartment meant. I messaged Priya directly. "My name is Michelle Caro. I believe you know my husband, Gregory Caro. I think we need to talk," she called within the hour. "Husband," she said. "I am sorry. Did you say husband?" "Yes. He told me he was divorced. I am not his ex-wife." There was silence, then the sound of a door closing on her end. "When did you meet him?" I asked. "Last winter. He came into the leasing office with a vendor. We started talking after that." "What did he tell you about me?" "That the divorce was finalized, that you moved across the state. He said you barely spoke except about paperwork." "I live with him." "Oh my God." I heard her breathing change. "He helped with the apartment," she said. "The deposit, some furniture. He said he wanted me to have somewhere stable until we could decide what came next." "What did he say came next?" "That he would move in after he finished selling the house. He said the apartment was temporary, the beginning of our future." "Did you know the rent came from our joint account?" "No. I thought it was his money, his commissions." She began sending screenshots while we spoke. Messages from Greg saying the divorce was finished. Messages describing me as someone from his past. Messages promising he would move in by the end of the year. One message said, "Once the house situation is settled, we will not have to hide anymore." Priya read it aloud and stopped. "He made it sound like he was protecting me from a difficult ex-wife," she said. "He made me feel irresponsible for asking about my own savings. I am ending it. That is your decision. You do not believe me. I believe you were lied to. I do not know you well enough to believe anything beyond that." "That is fair." Her voice was smaller when she spoke again. "I am sorry your surgery got delayed." I closed my eyes. "I am not ready to hear that from you." "I understand. We did not become friends. We did not comfort each other. There was too much damage between us, even if neither of us had created it." But the screenshots proved something important. Greg had not made one impulsive mistake. He had built two complete realities and maintained both with patience. I sent the messages to Alan. 2 weeks later, I filed for divorce. Greg was served at his office. He came home that evening holding the papers in one hand. His anger was visible but controlled, as if even then he was trying to manage the room. "You had me served in front of my team. I did not choose where the process server found you. You could have talked to me first. I asked you about the money. You lied. You went through our accounts. You contacted Priya. You hired a lawyer behind my back. Do you understand how invasive that is? The account has my name on it. The house has my name on it. The marriage has my name on it. It was temporary." What was temporary? The apartment, the affair, or telling me we were broke? I was going to repay the money. When commissions improved. You said commissions were why the money was gone." He looked away. "Priya was in a difficult situation. Her credit was bad. She needed help. So did I. That is not fair. I was bleeding through my work clothes, Greg." His face tightened. "You said the doctor told you it could wait." "No, you said that. Our marriage has been hard for years. You were always tired. You never wanted to go anywhere. Everything became about work and doctors and pain." I stared at him. "You are blaming my health for your affair?" "I am saying I was lonely, and I was in pain. I did not force you to work extra shifts." "No, you just watched me do it while you sent our money somewhere else. You should have confronted me before calling a lawyer. So you could explain it again?" We have 11 years together. Does that mean nothing to you? It meant enough that I trusted you with everything. I still love you. You loved having me believe you. That is not true. You told Priya I lived across the state. You told me her apartment was employee housing. You told me there was no money for surgery. Which part was love? He opened his mouth, then closed it. I continued before he could find another calm answer. You did not just cheat on me. You watched me cut groceries. You watched me wear broken shoes. You watched me take extra shifts while I was sick. You let me believe taking care of my body would destroy our finances because the truth was that you had already chosen what our money was for. I can fix this. No. You can respond through Alan. He looked at me differently then, as if he finally understood that the conversation was not an opening for negotiation. The divorce process was not dramatic. There was no courtroom speech and no moment where Greg lost everything. During mediation, Alan placed the bank statements, guarantor notice, purchase timeline, and screenshots in front of the mediator. Greg's attorney argued that some payments were gifts and that Greg had intended to reimburse the account. Alan did not raise his voice. Intent does not erase the withdrawals, he said. The funds were marital, the spending was concealed, and the timing directly overlapped with medical treatment Mrs. Caro postponed because she was told the money did not exist. The final settlement gave me a meaningful credit for part of the documented spending. Not every dollar, not a fantasy victory. Greg kept his car and most of his retirement account. I kept enough to begin again without carrying the full financial cost of what he had done. I signed a lease on a small one-bedroom apartment near work. The leasing agent slid the paperwork toward me and said, "Initial here and sign at the bottom." My hand shook. For years, Greg had told me contracts, accounts, and money were easier if he handled them. Signing my own lease should have felt ordinary. Instead, it felt like walking into a room without a railing. Denise waited outside with coffee. "How did it go?" she asked. "I read every page," she smiled. "Good." 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I rescheduled my surgery. The same nurse asked me to confirm the date. This time, I gave it to her. On the morning of the procedure, Denise sat beside me in the waiting room, holding a bag filled with things I had not asked her to bring. "You nervous?" she asked. "Yes, about the surgery? About all of it." She reached for my hand. "You are allowed to be scared and still do the right thing." When they called my name, I stood without apologizing to anyone. Recovery hurt. Denise stayed with me for the first 3 nights, brought soup, organized my medication, and complained about my terrible TV choices. On the second night, she asked, "How do you feel?" "Lighter," I said. "Even with the stitches." My apartment was quiet after she left. At first, that silence frightened me. I had spent so many years treating independence like a risk that freedom felt unfamiliar. But every bill I opened belonged to me. Every balance was visible. Every decision about my body was mine. For a long time, Greg made me believe that taking care of myself was something we could not afford. Leaving him taught me the truth. The real expense had never been the surgery. It was staying with someone who taught me to doubt my own pain.